I'm going to work on the worms today. You going to be up here? Evidently, Moose will be joining us while we work on harvesting. Big day. Big day. We've been starving this tier for a while. It's getting to the point where it's pretty dry. I doubt there's too many worms left in here, although I did do a little bit of a check and I did see there is a few cocoons in here we're going to pull out. So I'm going to go ahead and take tier 3 and put it in this container with our other castings that we harvested last time. I'll show you. It stayed nice and damp in here. I got a good container. Hey, Wally, you helping too? Everybody's helping. So we got, we'll say like we're about here, and I'll put this over. So probably what was that, like a third, maybe a quarter of the way through this container here. And yeah, so we're gonna add to that all of this in here. I'm not super worried about any like eggshells or larger like avocado pieces. It's all going out in the garden anyway, so it'll break down eventually. So let me work on that and sort these out, and then like always I'll have a plate that I put everything on that we've taken out so we can just see how much is in here. And just as a matter of interest, this is tier 3. It's been starving a little over a month now, probably about not quite a month and a half, pretty darn close. So also tier 3 has been split, and we took a bunch of the worms into our tier 1 recently, another tier that had been somewhat recently started. So that helped move a lot of the worms out of here. But actually this tier has been active, if my records are correct, for the better part of 6 or 7 months. Like I have in my notes that we started this about mid to end of February, and so we're in September now, so it's been going for a long time, probably longer than normal. But I think part of the reason we had let it go was because we were pulling worms out and getting worms out of here to go into either the urban worm bag or into other tiers as we were starting them. So that's why it went a little bit longer than normal. But there was a decent amount of castings in here, and I'm really excited to just get in here and start sorting. So instead of having you guys watch fully, I will just pull out everything and then put it off to the side, and then I'll show you what we pulled out of here. I will say, just generally speaking, if you've ever harvested or never harvested, there is no necessarily wrong way to do it. Really, all I do, my method, especially for something as small as this hot frog, is I typically wait till it's a little bit drier in here, and then that way I just kind of go scoopful by scoopful. And what I'm looking for are a few things. Oh, I dropped it. So I just kind of do like I'm not catching everything in here. One, obviously worms are the most obvious choice. But two, what I'm looking for mostly in here is any cocoons that have not hatched yet. And I haven't seen a whole lot of them, but I know they're in here. All right, here's one. You can see it. It looks kind of like a tomato seed. I don't want to squish it, but this is the gold within the gold, in my opinion, because these are all future worms, and it's not like there's just one worm in here. There's potentially quite a few of them. And so since past worms went ahead and did all that work to leave behind more, oh, here's another one, more cocoons, and by extension more worms, we want that, and we don't want to let them go to waste potentially. So what I'm trying to do is just make sure that these don't end up in an environment that, not that they wouldn't be helpful, because I'm in a container garden, so I'm sure it would be helpful a little bit to the bucket, but ultimately there's not a lot of food in those buckets for those worms. So here we go. Here's another egg. We're gonna go, oh no, this one's already been hatched. So I'm just trying to make sure that anything that has potential life in it like this that we can use and move into future bins is is cared for, right? Because that's energy that could be used and not wasted. Not that it's a complete waste, but anyways, so besides obviously worms, we're trying to pull the cocoons out. So we'll see how many we find. Okay, so we have, I didn't take all of the castings out. There's about this much left, and the reason I'm leaving this in here is so that we have some biome to jumpstart this next tier that's going to be in here. So that's kind of going to just stay in the bottom, and also the further or deeper down that we get, there's usually more eggs just because it's still a more hospitable area. But I would say of all the harvests we've done, this has probably been the easiest slash I don't want to say like lackluster, but we waited long enough, we had pulled enough worms out where this is all that I ended up taking out. There's a lot of cocoons. I did find quite a few cocoons in the castings that look like they were opened, so that's good. Hopefully those worms migrated, but there, as far as worms go, there's probably like 4 or 5. I mean, there's really not that many, but there's a ton of cocoons, which are, you know, future worms for us. So I'm gonna go ahead and leave these guys back in here. There really weren't that many cocoons. Oh, well, that's not true. There were plenty of cocoons. Worms, almost none. You can actually, I don't know if you guys can see them. They're right here. There's only a few of them in there. And they were a little sluggish, so I'm assuming because this was so dry and there was probably no real food for them, they were probably just having a rough time. So, to get this here started, I am going to continue on my coconut coreless adventure. And so I have this bag that I always have on hand of shredded paper products. So this top layer is mostly shredded cardboard, which I know they love. So we're gonna put a healthy amount of that in. And then we're gonna go ahead and just, I'm gonna take from the bottom of this Mary Poppins bag here. And this is more like paper bags, you know, household paper that got shredded, that type of stuff. So lots of that. I'm gonna go a little bit heavier on the bedding than I have in the past, I think. I don't think I went quite this full. We'll get some more of the cardboard at the top here. Just, I did try seeing if it would make any help to sift with this, but this is too big of a hole for that. So the cocoons were going right through it. So anyways, we're filling this pretty well full. And then I always like to start the bin with more than just that. So what else are we putting in here? I will show you. But before we get too far into that, I want to just show you how much castings we actually got. So this is the mound. Essentially, I was just trying to push all of it in this, or put it all in the same area. I'm sure I missed some cocoons. I can see one here. Oops. Just dump that in here. But this didn't really go up. But now when we level it out, did it go up? I'm sure it went up a little bit, but there wasn't, you know, it wasn't our biggest harvest ever, but there's quite a bit in here. So since we're getting into the planting season here for Florida, this is going to be coming in handy real soon as I refresh my containers. So if you guys want to see the uses of this, make sure you're subscribed, so as we do our garden updates, you can kind of hear about how we use this in our garden here in Florida. But this tier is getting nice and full. So before we were probably, I mean, we definitely added to it, but this is going to be tremendously helpful. Oh, and D, I believe you're like, why didn't you take the little staple off? I know of the tea bags. I found a few of these. Clearly I missed this one, but they show up eventually, so we'll just put it off to the side and toss it out with the random scraps that accidentally got put in here, but no harm done. Okay, so I'm going to close this up so it can stay safe and no buggies can get into it, and then we'll keep working on refreshing tier 3. So let's talk about how we're starting this beyond just the paper that we're putting in here. So there are some castings at the bottom. Normally I put castings on the top as well, but I have a plan when I take the worms from another tier to put in here. We're going to be taking a little bit of extra castings to go in here. I'm just going to try that. I also have a few random tea bags that were given to me that had been expired. So we're just going to pop these off and then I just throw them in. I'm not really worried about where they go. They're not really hurting anything, to my knowledge. And then I have a few of the, I have two. I have this one, and then this one I just showed you guys. This stuff doesn't, it's synthetic. It doesn't break down, these special fancy tea bags. So I just pop them open, and I just take the contents of them. And there is caffeine in this one, so I didn't put too many of them. There aren't, these are caffeine free, these other ones. And I know some people say that the reason the coffee grinds are so sought after for the worms and the worms love them is because of the caffeine boost. So we'll see if they get that caffeine boost with these loose leaf tea elements. Well, I guess there's no way we'll really know, but probably not going to hurt them either. So we'll just leave this off to the side. And I wanted to put the covers of the tea bags in, but they have kind of a wax finish. So I didn't feel comfortable putting them in there because I didn't know if it was like really wax or it was just like a plastic. So just be careful about that if that's on your radar. So I'm gonna put that off to the side. And then I always try and remember to start my bin with some added grit, which literally is just grits in our case. Sometimes I add washed eggshells in. So my method is very unscientific. It's just a handful that we just toss right on in, maybe a little bit extra. I try to add this to the tiers in general when I do like maybe like halfway markers, like after they've been going for a month or two. Sometimes I remember, sometimes I don't. Usually whenever I add new bedding, I try to look at the situation and see if they need more. And then, so the next thing we're going to be adding is our mosquito bits, which are not technically necessary, but I like to put them in ahead of time. And I realize that these are activated when wet, but what's been working for me is, let's say I throw some of these in, right? And right now, there's nothing really going to soak them. They're just going to sit there. But what I hope to have happen is, and what I think is happening on other tiers, is when this particular tier, like let's say it gets too wet or something and there is moisture, that kind of activates these mosquito bits, I hope, and then they can start working and preventing anything from reproducing in here we don't want to. And obviously this is a very dry layer, and so what I did was I took some wet cardboard, shredded paper, all that jazz, and this is going to be my topper. And so what I'm hoping to do is to have this kind of sit on top, and then since this water or this paper has been soaking for a little bit, I'm hoping we'll see some of the wicking action help with the excess moisture. But I'm not going to discard this water. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put this tier on its in the hot frog, where it's going to be sitting for a little bit while it's just kind of getting its biome up and running, and then we'll dump this water on top of it. So let me go move some of the tiers around over here on my hot frog and I'll show you guys. Look at tier 4. It's open here. It has the reflections from the prisms, I guess, of the window clean, making this nice rainbow effect on it. So tier 4 is the next tier that we're starting the star cycle on. However, there are plenty of worms in here, and there are also plenty of food they're still working on in here. So I anticipate they're going to be in here for a little while longer. Let's see, tier, the little dropping section below that is below them, and that is pretty uneventful right now. There's bedding and stuff in there, but there's not really a lot of activity in there. So my thought is I will go ahead and put tier 3 on top of tier 4. There we go. Because in our most recent feeding, tier 4 still had food in there, and this was just a few days ago, so we didn't feed them additional food. So we'll put tier 3 on top, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pour just a little bit of water over this here. I anticipate some of it's going to drip down below, but I'm trying to just disperse it a little bit just to help keep or get the moisture levels in this tier going a little bit. And then that way, pretty soon, we can start putting worms in here, I hope. So this tier 3, let me zoom out a little bit, is going to be the second to last tier, and then we'll put tiers 1 and 2 on top of it. So it'll be kind of sandwiched in between, so if any worms feel compelled to go in here, it's technically ready to go for the most part. It's not perfect, but they, you know, it's not empty either. So I'm hoping that this will be kind of like the new go-to place. Maybe we'll feed it this week. I doubt we'll feed it, but we'll probably move some worms to it from, I'm thinking, tier 4 next time. There's not a huge number of worms in tier 4 because we've been pulling some of them out to go out to the urban worm bag. Not as many as some of the other tiers, but a decent amount. So that concludes this harvesting and restarting a tier. And I'll just dump these tiers right on top. So then if you guys want to see how we start moving some of the worms, make sure you subscribe so you can check out that video, which will be happening pretty soon. And then if you know somebody that you think might want to get into worms, make sure to share this video with them, because the more of us doing this, the better. Alright guys, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you soon.